But Andrew, you joined at a good time. We've got 500 subscribers officially today on our YouTube channel.
Brilliant. So probably about 499 more than I have.
Yeah, so there's a 5,000% increase in your reach now.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
No, Andrew, but thanks for joining. So, Bobby, you and I spoke briefly about it, but I mean, the long and the short of it is Andrew is an absolute legend, which I've known for quite some time now. But I think what is really interesting is Andrew's journey of starting an agency, which is the story of many people in South Africa starting a company. It's like a services consulting business. And then building it over a period of a few years, ups and downs, getting all the stuff down to a point where they actually had an exit. And they sold the business to a listed company. And then are part of that group. So there's a really nice story of like, how do you start an agency? How do you grow an agency? How do you position an agency for an acquisition? Maybe some stories of whatever Andrew's comfortable around that journey of selling the business. I mean, I speak to many agency founders, and so many of them, have that kind of question. Like, I built a business, I establish it now, I make a bit of money. Some years I don't, and I work my butt off, like you did, Andrew, and still do. But like, what is next? Like, how do you? And if exit is an option someone wants to consider, like, how do you go about it? What is the secret?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think we can touch a bit on that, and then we can maybe also talk, because Bobby and I initially spoke around software delivery, etc. So maybe we can cover both topics.
Yeah, we can probably tie in, like, if you give the agency background and that kind of conversation, and then we can talk about like what made that agency successful was delivering successful products. So tie it in that way maybe, and then we can dive into the product side of it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Greetings, builders. Welcome to another episode of How Would You Build It? We're on episode 35, and we got a guest today, Andrew. How are you doing, Andrew? Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for the invitation, Bobby and Renier. Good to have a chat.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Renier, welcome back. Keeping sane during the Rugby World Cup. How are you feeling about things?
Yes, man. The pressure is building. We have to beat France on the weekend. So
it's our second final.
Stressed and excited about it. Yeah, let's go Booker.
Let's go Booker. Well, Andrew, I think we were talking about offline, but you come from a consultancy agency background. You've had your own, and it turns out you've actually sold your agency or your consultancy. Do you want to give us a very quick high level about that experience, about that journey of starting your consultancy and then moving to a place where it was able to exit and some of those highlights?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all happened 12 years ago back in a garage, following a braai with a friend. He said, there's this new technology coming out. It's called responsive. It's going to change everything. You won't be building a separate mobile app and a separate website. You'll be building one site and it will cater for both. I was like, no way, we should start a business and call it responsive. And that was pretty much the starting point. And like I said, in the garage, building out responsive websites, probably some of the first in the country. So we definitely paid for our school fees, and it just grew from there. We moved into more complex work over time. We got brave, and we were fortunate enough to land some great work and some great clients. And then from there, a couple of years ago, we did do an exit with a listed company. And now it's a whole new learning curve. So the journey continues. So
Andrew, just taking you back to the start, right? So a lot of people, they have a dev job and a good paying dev job. Mostly you're a developer, and then you've got some debit orders and you've got those golden handcuffs firmly around the arms of things you have to pay, kids' school fees, etc. What advice would you give to someone that says, I want to start an agency, I see an opportunity like you did with responsive websites. Like, how do you take that plunge? Do you start it on the side? Do you dive head first and trust it? Do you try and find the first customer? Like what did you do? And then, looking back on what you've learned, what would you recommend to anybody else that is considering it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we just really started off slowly. We landed one client and we just grew it organically. I can't say there was a massive master plan behind it. I think we delivered strong, we delivered value, and we were trusted with more and more. And, some of our clients have been long-standing clients because we really try and go the extra mile. And I think if people see your intention and the value you bring, it creates a momentum of its own. But I do think it's key, in the current web industry to get the right skills as well. As you know, it's getting more and more complex, and it's not something you can necessarily wing. So at a base foundation, you definitely have to have the right skills, or you need to have people you can partner with. So I think that's a good starting point. Get the right skills and get a good starting client who trusts you and you can deliver value and you can go that extra mile.
Mm-hmm. But what skills would you say is important, right? So we all know that dev skills is like at the top, like that's the most scarce, the most difficult, and to find someone that not can do it, but can do it well. So what do you say is probably the most complementary kind of skill set to have to kind of start building that team?
Yeah, I think it's different. I mean, it's such a big landscape nowadays, right? I think we really started within the front end space. And then over time, we added the back end. Then we added the cloud. Then we added the design and then the UX. So I would just say niche where your strengths are, find the clients, and then grow your competencies thereafter. I think the danger is to go too wide. Go deep before you go wide.
I like that. I really do like that a lot.
But Andrew, and I mean that's really good advice. But I mean, I've seen so many founders, they get scared, right? They go, if I niche too much, the amount of customers I can service gets small. Like, how would you go about uncovering a niche where you can go, okay, cool, this is where we can get really good at, and how do you what would you tell someone if they ask you, how do I get my focus down? How do I niche down? Because generally people start broad, right? They go, let's cover as many bases, try to catch a first customer, and then do you catch that first customer and then try a niche, or do you niche from the beginning and go? And how did you do it? Did the customer lead you in where you double down and focus?
Yeah, I think I just saw a gap in the market that aligned with my skills. And it just got a lot of traction very quickly. And I think some of the lessons I would say being in the agency world is we had some very big waves. We were on a skateboard and we were riding that wave and it was awesome. But then, like all true waves, or even if you're on a roller coaster, at some point the ride comes to an end. And you have to be ready to, you have to always be building your pipeline. You've got to keep generating leads. And I think if that's probably a couple of my biggest lessons, is have a CRM and keep it up to date. And also be consistent around business development, sales and marketing, grow your pipeline, and don't take anybody or any client for granted. So you've got to put in the effort. I don't consider myself a marketer, but I've partnered with people who understand marketing to help me so that my messaging in the market is clear. People understand what we do, and it helps the narrative as well. Because you can talk too much tech speak where you lose some of your stakeholders. And so there's been a lot of coaching, there's been a lot of partnering to try and get that right. And what I would say, even today, we're still learning.
One of the things that I've experienced is that sales cycle, how long it actually takes from that first time that they say they're interested in your service to where that actually gets signed off and you actually start on it. So what's your experience on kind of navigating someone that's getting their funnel going, but those ones that are landing are just taking so long and you've got bills to pay?
Yes, it's a common problem in our current world. I'll say what you can try, and it depends on the client, is you can often try and take smaller pieces of work that are commercially less scary for your clients, and you get to prove yourself. And so we do a lot of that. You can position it as an audit, a review, a discovery phase. And the important thing is to deliver value. And often they're not always hugely profitable engagements, but they are a door opener to further work in a long-term relationship. So I always think about that as a starting point into a long-term engagement. And it's all about adding value and showing what you're capable of, building trust.
Yeah, what I love about what you're saying and in our previous conversations is that you talk about value as a product manager. Like that's like we just walk around saying, how are we going to add value? So you don't just do it from a business consulting, like your product is your consultancy or your agency, but actually what you're delivering is also then value down the chain to users of something that you're building for them. And I like that you're kind of positioning value at the front, because it's like at the pivot of what everyone should be focusing on is how do we deliver value? And what would you say, when delivering products to your customers, how did you hone in and make value that value proposition that they, okay, cool, what do you need? This is how I'm going to get you to that point.
Yeah, there's many ways, but I think and maybe this also comes back to an earlier question, some lessons from the past, is as soon as possible, get a great designer on board.
Okay.
Your clients will see what you're capable of, even from your presentations, your proposals, and you bring your designers into the picture. And a lot of people, clients, etc., males, we're very visual. We want to see how this thing can work. And so I try and take a visual approach in our presentations, in our proposals, and I try and cast a vision that people can see. And then they want to like, hey, let's do this. So you almost want to tease them visually. And it's a little trick, but you have to back it up with great delivery. And you want to deliver strong.
I mean, Renier, you're quite familiar with that as well. You were kind of in the space before. I mean, delivering value, giving them that kind of slice of what's to come, but then delivering. That's the key, right? You can paint a beautiful picture until you deliver.
Yeah, but to Andrew's point, if I can expand a bit, if you understand who you're talking to, right? So if you're speaking to someone that's quite technical, taking a lead developer into that conversation and showing off some technical flex is probably going to help you, for them to understand like what value are they going to get when the technical capability and the technical output of what you're delivering is of high value to them. But generally most people are quite visual, at least most people that work in the business space, right? And showing them something visual, something that looks beautiful, can get their mind racing as to thinking about that press release that they're going to put out when this product's finally built and how awesome it's going to be, right? So that helps. But in the same vein, if there's a lot of little sub nuances. I mean, I mentioned technical, but if you speak to a product person, speaking how this product is going to result in some of the unit economics or metrics that product person might find interesting is could be appealing to them, which actually says a few things, right? So when you pitch as an agency, on the one hand, it's really important to understand who you're pitching to and be sure that you can, speak to what they would value. But I think, secondly, what is also interesting is it also means that certain clients simply won't be a good fit for you. So if you are a front-end development agency and, you're talking to someone that's a back-end developer and, they don't really care what front-ends look like, they're likely going to opt for someone that's more suited to what they value. And that doesn't make them right or wrong. It's just you might be wasting your time. So to your point of the sales cycles, what I've seen is sometimes the sales cycles take really long because you're pitching into a client that's most likely not a good fit and most likely won't value what you value. So not everybody values the same thing, even in this digital space. So, it's really about finding out, okay, well, where is your strengths? And then figuring out, okay, how do you play those strengths to benefit the organization you're working with and your organization to the maximum.
Yeah. So Andrew, taking it back to the fact that your agency, your consultancy was based on delivering or building software products and businesses, what was your experience in terms of having, people come to you and saying, I want to build this? I mean, we know that expectations are always, massive, but in reality, we can only deliver this much. So how do you help manage your customers, your clients' expectations and what you can do, should do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And a common problem to solve around managing expectations, right? And I think, clients often underestimate how long it takes, how much it costs, and the expertise required to deliver an app these days that can scale and that's future-proof. Otherwise, you end up going through that journey again and you go around the mountain. So I think it's around, and Renier knows this well, is managing expectations around call it minimal key feature set. Let's not build the whole app, but let's focus on a few key features that can test user adoption. Are the business goals aligned with what the user wants? Let's focus on those features. Let's build them well. Let's test it. Let's iterate. And another way to show value, which we're talking about, is if you are taking an agile process, is do your sprint demos. Show them what you've built. Don't do the big reveal at the end. Show them iteratively. Get customer feedback. And ideally, get the end user feedback to bring into that process so that you end up building the right thing and build it the right way, and then hopefully build it fast. If you've got some good boilerplates and good templates that you can leverage, call it UI kits or utilities out there that can help you get to market quick, because clients want value and they want it quick. And it's a difficult balance to navigate, but you can't build all the features in 3 months typically, or you can't build Facebook again in 3 months either. So it's managing what is feasible within a time frame, within a budget, and then delivering it well. Otherwise, you overpromise and underdeliver. You burn your brand, your client's upset, and you've got gray hair overnight.
Or nowhere.
I've
been in agencies too long.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. But what I find so interesting, and just like, chatting to you, Andrew, is it's like these concepts that we seem to take for granted as people that are like delivering, that are in the space, like everything you just said, right? So it's not just about your clients, but it's probably what you're building for them and their users as well, right? Like you need to start getting that feedback. It sounds obvious, but people seem to get it wrong, and they go tech first, and they want to just, like you talk about, a key feature set. No, they want to build it all. It needs to be involved. I'm not going to be okay until everything's in there. But we know that those are the principles that are not within building successful products. I mean, I'm sure you can attest.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We leverage design thinking, and the whole idea is to, get that user input up front. Otherwise, you risk launching something that users don't want to use. It doesn't solve their problems. And maybe it ticks a box in the business, but the user is not engaging with the product. So you have to think about, how do you include the user in the upfront experience and thinking and strategy, and not just take, like you said, a technical first approach. So it takes time and budget to do that process and to do it well.
What I'm hearing, though, it's like, we spoke about the consultancy and talking about like your initial team that you have, but it sounds like design is at the forefront. So you've got what I assumed, what I take away was like graphic design, making sure your presentations are looking good and kind of is a glimpse into what you'll be able to do. But actually having a UX designer at the seat of the table. Do you believe in the three amigos? The three amigos, right? The devs, the design, and the product manager. So that's why I always ask, like, which one comes first?
Yeah, absolutely. But it depends what you're building. If you're building out backend, you don't need a strong design competency. So it comes down to, in software anyway. But ultimately, if it's got a user interface, we term it a product designer rather than a UX or UI designer. And it's really focused on building that product experience for the user who's going to be using it, and understanding what are their needs, what are their goals on this app, and how do we create a great user flow for them across this app. That could be labeled information architecture, for example, a bit of a sitemap. How do you get from A to B in the optimal way, in a great user experience, as minimal hops as possible, and they can get done what they need, and really planning that, thinking it through, and then leveraging technology that enables that. We don't want lots of page refreshes. We want to see our screens loading quickly. We don't want to be waiting for the spinning circle. And so it's all a partnership. It's a team to make it all come together nicely. But I would say, if your end user is a person having to navigate a UI interface, invest in a great designer and design process.
Yeah. So Renier, I know you've spoken about this in the past, or you've kind of brought up the point. When you talk about like investors and people that are actually building a business out of this product, so we're sitting here talking about making it pretty, make sure it works. I mean, from a dev point of view, you want to make sure that if something gets pressed, it actually does what it's meant to do. And, so we spend a lot of time making sure that it's right. Now you go and tell an investor that you need another month of runway to get to this point. I just want to get your feel from a business perspective when you're telling people to do design thinking and you want to do this iterative approach. Like, how do you manage that conversation and, again, expectations?
Yeah, I think perhaps if I can take a step back, like, sometimes, let me put it this way. The most important thing for an agency is really to understand their competency and their promise, right? And, when you look at building digital products, your competency could be anything from, we're really good software developers and you tell us what to build and we'll build it, right? That's the promise. Now, whether or not that product ends up being a success, it's that the promise wasn't, let's make your product a success. The promise was, we'll build great code, right? So it's a objectively measurable outcome, which someone can go, if I ask someone else if this was good code, high quality code, would they say yes? Yes, they say yes. So I've delivered on my promise, right? But that is over the years, that's where agencies started. Like, people couldn't find developers. They go, cool, let me get someone to write me good code. But as time has progressed, people have realized, what? There's both an opportunity and a need for agencies to evolve to become more full service agencies, right? To add UX and UI, but then, to add the product components, some design thinking, some strategic work. And then ultimately, it spills over into, are you helping me make my product a success, right? Now, the problem with that promise is that's a really difficult promise, because there's a lot of other elements that play into that promise, which could make it hard for an agency to deliver. One being the entrepreneur or the founder is not executing the right steps to make this business work, right? So, so we see a lot of these venture studios popping up going, we're going to help you build $1 billion venture, and I'm like, whoa, that's a bit of a difficult promise to make, because there's a lot of stuff out of your control. Like, it's not guaranteeing a process where that you follow a design thinking process, that you go through the motions of executing a design process in terms of UX and UI, and then writing high quality code that can scale to a certain level. That thing has boundaries around it, and both parties can be really happy with the output, irrespective of whether or not the product ends up being a success, because that's really in the hands of the entrepreneur. So in terms of these things, I think also if a founder is listening to this and they want to work with an agency, I think it's very important to clarify whose job is what here. And often, even agencies that say they do venture building, there's limits to which they can do, because they never have actual ownership of the venture. So, it's very important for founders to understand, like, what am I consulting someone to do for me here, right? And if you understand that, chances of success is better, because then you can identify where the gaps are and either hire people into those gaps or fill those gaps yourself, or actually ask the agency, hey, could you fill this gap for us as well? And I think that's such an important thing. So to your question of, go back to the investor to ask for more funding, I think if those expectations are managed from day one, you'll have less of these awkward moments of having built software and, it hasn't made enough progress to justify a follow-up round.
So and I think there's a slight differentiation, in the market between an agency focused on building out campaigns and websites and landing pages with a strong marketing focus, they call it a software development agency, and a design competency building out mobile apps. They're different skill sets and they use different technologies. And I think in that scenario, as you're looking for a good partner, have a look at the portfolio, make sure that they've built something that has scaled. that has gone the distance, ask the hard questions, and really understand what does their sweet spot look like. Not just, hey, they're nice people, they do great work. You actually need to ask deep questions. And then that also gives you a certain sense of comfort that, hey, with your investor conversations, I've got the right partner. They can go the distance. They've done it before. And then work with that partner to try and get as much clarity on costings and risks, like get that out of the way as early as possible. Have the hard conversations. What are the risks here? Let's surface them. Let's mitigate them together so that we know that with the funding we have, we can deliver a core set of features, and we don't have to have too many red faces too often.
Yeah. So let's
and Andrew, I think
sorry,
Bobby. Andrew, and I think that's such an important point, right? And I've seen the uncomfortable questions, in the startup phase. I think there's two parts. Founders often don't know which questions they should ask.
That was my question, Renier. You took the words out of my mouth. What are the questions?
But the second thing, which I think is almost more scary, is, there's this desire for positivity when we talk about ideas and businesses we build. So people, they have this bias towards good news, right? So it's so freaking tough to build a business or startup that, people almost want to shy away from the discomfort of finding another reason why this couldn't work, right? So it's almost as if one should be aware of that bias that we have towards wanting a win, wanting good news, wanting to make progress, wanting to start the development, wanting to get the app on the App Store. That desire, can blind us to stop and go, let's get really uncomfortable here. Perhaps this thing's never going to work, or perhaps this partner is not the right one, or, and I think that's more the important one. So understanding what questions to ask, it's difficult. Maybe you should get someone who's built it before as an advisor. That's something that I've seen so few startup founders in South Africa do. Just send a LinkedIn message to someone who's built a startup before, or someone like Andrew or myself, whoever, and go, hey, I'm building something. I just want to have a second opinion on something. What do you think of this or that? And I think more people should be doing that. But then, just stay away from that desire for good news, that bias towards wanting to make progress, and get really uncomfortable.
I can attest to that as well, working in the agency space. Definitely, we do look for the positives because we want the business to continue. We want to get more business. We want to build more features, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. So it's about those validations. But Andrew, I just want to get your opinion on what kind of questions should someone be asking in general for a consultancy. Like, as a founder, I want to bring business to you. What do we need to know about each other?
I think a couple of things, definitely. You want to know, hey, how long have these guys been around? Are they going to be around tomorrow? Is it just two guys in a garage? Because if I'm going to throw a lot of money your way and your only key team member goes on leave for a month or two, what's going to happen to my product? So make sure there's some runway there in terms of team. And maybe just unpack a little bit about their skill set. What are the typical tech stacks? I know it's quite technical, but I think it's important. What type of cloud platforms do they like to leverage? What type of tools? What does their design competency look like? And even then, show me some of your portfolio apps. Can I download them? Send me some links. Can you show me a prototype? I'd actually like to play and have a feel with what you've built before. And obviously, from a technical perspective, it can get quite deep. But to Renier's point, there's so many great mentors out there who would love to work with you, partner with you, and answer, it probably cost you a coffee, and help you ask the right questions for validation. And, and also what I would say is, and I know this is maybe a bit controversial, but look for someone with a bit of domain experience. Someone who's worked in your industry, done something similar, I also feel helps, because if you're partnering with someone who hasn't done any e-commerce before, or retail, or in a sector, you're going to be paying a certain level of school fees, and you want to minimize that as far as possible. I know, Renier, you've got your own stories about building apps with how to find products quickly through search. It's like the little things that make a big difference. And you don't know the little things if you haven't built it before. So I think the portfolio is a big part of it. And I know it's hard to get a portfolio when you're just starting out. So you have to be strategic, intentional, very focused, and build your portfolio strategically over time. But it's nice when you can create a bank of projects that speak to a sector, that speak to an industry, that showcase, I've got domain knowledge, I've done this before, your risk is limited, I've got a great team, and would love to partner with you to build something great.
I think one of the questions that I like to pose and put it out there, and even to people that this is a little bit separate, but for a product manager, for example, that's looking for a job, right? When you're in an interview, because I mean, I guess when you're interviewing a consultancy or agency to do your work for you, it's an interview. And what I like to ask or find out is, what is your process? Like, how do you go about it, right? So here's the idea. Can you tell me your process so that I've got a better understanding of what I'm getting myself into here? And I like that because you can couple it with if they got domain knowledge, right? So tell me, with that domain knowledge, what would you do? What is your process now that you understand X, Y, and Z? What would you do in this case, right? And then they must tell you what they like. Like, I do this, we do this, and then this. And like, once we understand that, we do, exact. And from like a iterative approach, product approach, it's like, cool, then we plan to iterate and learn and get feedback and start the loop, right? So how do you go about doing that?
Brilliant. Yeah, very good. Put them in the hot seat. Walk me through how you would approach this problem.
Exactly. And especially because there's a lot of the same problems that people are trying to solve, right? People are trying to be the next Takealot or another e-commerce site, or they're trying to be the next ChatGPT AI tool, So it's like, you need to differentiate yourself. How are you going to go about doing that? No, you can't just build the same thing. So how are we going to be different about it? And how are we going to achieve that as a team? That's just my thoughts. Renier, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, for sure. And I think, when I started and ran an agency for a long time, and I remember, we started with developers, and I think our first hire, we outside of developer was a designer, and then we got a BA. And I remember when we got a BA, we sat down and we said, okay, let's develop, this was like early days for Agile, by the way, so don't judge me. This was a long time ago. But we had a BA, and we did a lacquer waterfall process. But what really helped is, we mapped out this process to the T, and we developed really good documentation templates to show exactly how we're planning, what we're going to be building in terms of UX, how the flow is going to look. And I remember when we would meet potential clients and we'll show them these templates, or we'll show them some of the documents we've done for internal projects, etc., they would be blown away. They go, wow, you go to this level of planning it. And that would install a lot of confidence in people, in us, by looking at it and going, okay, these guys know what they're doing, because this is their planning process. So I think, when whatever agency you're building, whether it's a digital marketing agency or a growth agency or a design agency or a software agency or an app agency, what you're bringing to the table is a know-how that will reduce risk, increase output, and increase value, right? And the client's paying a premium for that, right? So whatever you bring in terms of, or when you want to convince a client to work with you, that's really what you should be speaking to. Like, how am I going to reduce your risk, increase your value, and improve the time to market, okay? And then if you find that sweet spot where the amount of risk you're reducing, the amount of value you're adding, and the time to market you're saving is worth the premium that you're charging, then you're in business, right? And a lot of that has to do with showcasing your process, showcase your know-how, showcase the steps you take, etc. And if you get that right, then you can prove competency, which would get clients excited and want to work with you.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, brilliant.
Andrew,
I think, just to echo that, I think what we have is a mirror board highlighting our process in a very visual way. And I think, to your point, it just gives clients confidence that we've thought through a good process that works, and it can de-risk a lot of things. And I think that's important. So I just want to echo that.
Yeah. But again, that's why I like the concept of explaining a process, because what you might find out during those conversations is that they said they wanted this, but once you started unpacking everything, you realized that actually what they need is over here. They've got a different kind of problem. And so it's like saying, we can still do that. It's not like, but I think we need to focus over here first because there's a gap and we can kind of go and help you solve that gap first, right? And then we can get there later. I've experienced that, Andrew. I don't know if you've experienced that in your, many founders that have come to you, they don't know where they
Yeah,
go.
I think a good product owner will help guide that process, Bobby. So
I don't know where to find one of those,
help them prioritize the backlog, right? Let's focus on these things first. Let's think about reuse. Let's get a great sprint zero in place that sets everything up for a win. Let's get some good reporting happening on risks, on metrics, velocity. Let's have clear roles in the team. These are all things that you can do to set a product up for a win. But a lot of it, what you're talking about is having stakeholder conversations and guiding that process is very important. And you need the right person to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm kind of talking from my own experience. Renier?
Yeah, so Andrew, I want to pivot into a question I get a lot from agency founders, right? A lot of them have built this business and they kind of feel stuck in a way, right? And we've Bobby and I in one of the podcast episodes, someone shared like how complicated it is to get rid of a business, like to close it down is something not a lot of people think about, right? So you start an agency, you get 5 to 10 clients, maybe you have 10 employees. You can't actually close it down. Right, well, you can, but it's painful. I mean, the timing of finishing off projects with clients, letting staff go, getting all of that right, it's difficult. So what happens with a lot of times is, people start an agency and they build it and they either do it for the rest of their lives or something bad happens and it closes down, or they manage to get an exit. Okay, so you've been one of those people that have built an agency and had an exit. And I thought, perhaps you can share a bit about that journey. Like, was it something you were looking for? Did the exit find you? And what advice would you have for other agency founders that have built something that is definitely worth something? It's just like, how do you go about finding an exit?
It's a good question. I think, to be honest, in my situation, we kind of bumped into the guys who bought us on a project, and we ended up winning the project, and they were like, who are these people? Let's get to know them. And through that, we built a relationship that ended up in an exit. So it happened more haphazardly than strategically. And in retrospect, if I look in the rearview mirror, I wish I had kind of thought about it a lot more and planned it, because I could have got a totally different result. So I would say to founders who are maybe even just running a business now, always think about the exit, even if you're not going to exit, even if that exit is to yourself. What does that look like? And I think, in an exit in our scenario, it's a listed company and they are about shareholder value. It's all about returns. So if you're looking for your exit value, you need to be focused on showing results, because the price is often a factor of the results, and that's important. And I think you have to be really honest about that. Is the guys who are going to be buying this business want to see shareholder value. They want to see potential for growth. They're going to look at things like your team. Is this a one-man show? Can this business scale? So, I would have done things quite differently had I thought in advance about a lot of these things. And that would be my advice. And to your point, if you are looking at that, get some mentors, talk to some people who have done it before, and ask them to help you prepare for that journey, and recognize it's not something that necessarily happens overnight. In our case, it was 10 years in the making. And we had a list of successful clients, projects, and a great team. So, and part of it is they look at the people. What are we buying here? We're buying just more than a portfolio and a brand. We're looking at a team that we want part of the future as well. So I think that there's a lot of considerations there, but I would say is, think about how you can position your business, not only from a profit point perspective, from a team, from an offering and a niche, and think about that. One thing, I'm just going to throw it out there for your audience, but one of the best books out there is How to Grow a Small Business by Donald Miller. He's got playbooks on there around how to run a business from a cash flow, operationally, product strategy, sales and marketing. He covers those like 5 pillars really well. I read that book like almost a year ago, and I'm like, where was this book 12 years ago when I started this business? We'd be in a totally different position. And he's got like playbooks you can hit the ground running with. They're blank templates. It's targeted for a small business, but they're very scalable. They've thought through a lot of things. And I suppose one of the best things I can put out there, and I know this might not be helpful, is, but like as a small business, the key lesson is don't run out of cash. You run out of cash, you're going nowhere. So you have to get good financial principles in place. And you have to save for the rainy day, for the COVID event that catches you off guard.
Yeah.
You have to plan, like, how am I going to survive the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the trends, or am I just going to be a hype cycle business? You've got to build something that's sustainable.
Yeah.
But Bobby, if I can add to that, there's something that Andrew said that I absolutely love, right? I think what happens is founders, if you look at a founder of a small to medium-sized business, right? And typically, the business Andrew built was a medium-sized business. But you start off with a founder hat, but also an employee hat, and so now you're actually wearing 3 hats as a founder in a small business. You're a director, you're a shareholder, and an employee, right? And it's so important to go through the exercise of thinking what the different hats mean for different situations. Now, to Andrew's point, for an exit, you need to put on that shareholder hat and say, if I were to never work a single hour in this business again, what does this business need? Or what does this business need to look like for me to think this is a good investment, right? If I were to buy shares in this business as opposed to buying a JSE top 50 stock or buying shares in Apple, right? What do I want to see in this business as a shareholder that's not going to work in this company that would make it an attractive thing for me to buy, right? Now, things in there is all the stuff that Andrew mentioned. It's like, it's cash flow positive. It's got a good customer base. It's got a good reputation. It has a good team that can function independently of a shareholder being involved, right? So all of those things, if you just spend some time as a founder once a month to think, as a shareholder, what does this business look like to me? Is it bringing in returns, right? Because that's often something, in small businesses in South Africa, and I'm not talking about hyper-growth startups, I'm talking about cash flow positive businesses, they can neglect the return side quite a lot because they're going, we're investing in growth all the time. And that could be a trap, right? So you almost need to have a good balance of saying, well, as a shareholder, what is this bringing back to me? Because that would make it attractive for another person to go, I want shares in that business because the returns is better than what I can find elsewhere. So if your business is returning 20% per year, it's a really good investment, right? So a lot of people would want shares in a business that does that. So I think that's a very important aspect. Thinking, understanding which cap you're wearing. In the same breath, if you're wearing a director's cap, you've got some risks and personal liabilities and things you need to consider on that side. And that's also something you need to think about. That's different to being an employee. If you're an employee, you need to get the work done, right, to make the business work. But a director has different responsibilities. A shareholder has not only different responsibilities, but different things they look at. So advice I can give to founders, separate those things and think about it clearly. Like, because some of those things are conflicting as well, right? The shareholder might go, you know what, we need to get better returns, so we need to, I don't know, maybe reduce the size of the team or, go slower on growth or do X, Y, and Z. Whereas as an employee, you might feel, well, you don't want to let these people go because they're your mates, right? And they will conflict. Like, it's guaranteed to conflict when you're both a shareholder, director, and an employee.
Yeah.
But at least if you spend the time of going through the thought exercise of saying, I actually have 3 different roles here, then you can find those conflicts and actually figure out what's best for you in each of those roles.
And maybe just to add to that, and maybe for founders or businesses who are struggling to find that niche, to steal a term from software development, is iterate over perfection, iteration over perfection. So rather than doing a full pivot and go do a 180 on what's not working, is just keep iterating till you find your niche. I find business in the beginning, it's about survival till you get momentum and traction. And then you start building out those essential things that an investor is looking at for strategic reasons. So I just want to encourage the founders out there is, just hang in there. Make sure you've got the good fundamentals from a cash flow perspective to keep you going. Iterate till you get your sweet spot where you validate it almost in your own sense, your own product market fit, where I can do great work, it's worthwhile, and I can show shareholder value. And so, yeah, absolutely.
Now, so many nuggets, guys. I feel like I could nitpick all of the little points that were brought up today and make separate episodes on all of them. There was so much greatness there, guys. I have to thank you. But we're going to call it there. We have to wrap up, but it's been fantastic. And I think, Andrew, thank you again for coming. We'll have to have you back on and we can dissect more of these concepts.
Well, thank you for hosting me, Bobby and Renier. Looking forward to the next one.
Yes, man. Cool. On that note, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.